out on Tickle Naked Pond. We're at Station 1 using the coordinates from Google Maps on my iPhone, and I drop down the Secchi first, Secchi disc, and I pull out some line first to kind of let it go down. I'm just using my eyes without the view scope to watch it until it totally disappears. And then I'll use the view scope to get the most accurate reading. I'm going to drop it down until I can't see it, and then pull it up a little bit until it reappears, and drop it down at least one more time until it just disappears, and take that reading off on the surveyor tape here, and it's marked in meters in red, and then in centimeters or hundredths or tenths of a meter, sorry, in the black here. So 3.90. That's what I got. Out the view scope, and then putting in the view scope, just breaking the surface of the water, putting my eyes in here. You can already see it a lot more clearly. A bit more line right there. Okay. So I'm right at 5 meters actually, so I get a lot more with the view scope. And I think part of that is because there's a lot of sun today, a lot of glare. You don't want to use your sunglasses and try to get a darker, shadowy section of water to look through, but that is how you do the Secchi. Right, so I'll Tickle Naked Pond Station 1 and just did the Secchi depth measurement. Now we're going to do the surface sample using my surface sample bottle. Take off the cap. I'm going to rinse it on one side, or at least downwind, and what we're going to do is just dip it underneath the surface, fill it up, shake it up, pour it out. Do this 3 times. So you're rinsing not only the bottle with the lake water, but also your hand that you're going to be sampling with. And then either going upstream or upwind, I should say, here, kind of away from where you rinse, go straight down to your elbow depth, and then let it fill, pull it back up, put that back on, and that's it. Alright, so we're still at Tickle Naked Pond Station 1 now. Did the Secchi depth, and then the surface sample, and then for those of you that are using a deep water sampler or a Van Doren sampler, for its horizontal shape here, I'm going to drop this down to the depth that we want, typically a meter or 2 off the bottom. So I'll show you how to open these end caps first to arm it. So one way to do it is just turn it upside down so that you can pull out these end caps, let the pins lock in here and here. And now it's ready to go. And I pulled out some line already to the depth that I want to go. In this case, it's going to be 6 meters. And I'm just going to drop it down slowly. Hold the weighted messenger in your hand and let the line go through, and you're counting out meters in red and every 5 meters in yellow. You really want to make sure you stay nice and vertical with the line so that it gets triggered properly. We have a nice calm day today, so it should be perfect. So now I'm at 6 meters, I'm going to drop it down. I can feel and hear the click. Up. Like a good water sample, no sediment from the bottom in there, so it's clean. Drop the weight down, and usually what I do is just put it on one end, and then I'm going to pull up one pin. Make sure you don't get your hands in the water sample at all. Pull it up. I'm going to lock in the pin down here. And now I can rinse out my sample bottle. And with the sample water 3 times, just like at the surface. Swish it around. Fill it up. I'm going to rinse the cap as well. I'm just making sure I don't get my hands in the sample. Keep it from being contaminated. And finally, the lid. And also rinse with some of the sample. Cap. We're all done with our deep water sample. So we're still at Tickle-Naked Pond. We collected our samples, and now we're preparing to process the samples to store until pick up and take to the lab to get tested. So the first thing I do is I have my field sheet here, and I need to fill this out with the date and time collected. So I'm going to do that first. 16th. Make sure you write the full date and year, and then the actual time, AM or PM. So in this case, it's 12 PM. And then any comments if there was something wrong with the sample, got contaminated, or something else happened. And then you have your test down here that we're going to do today. Caffeine, chlorophyll A, total phosphorus, the container that it's going to go in. So the caffeine goes in the 50 milliliter plastic green cap. The chlorophyll will actually be a filter, which looks like one of these, that we're going to put through a filtering device, either a syringe with a filter holder, and we're going to pump through 100 milliliters of water, so 2 syringes, or some volunteers have the older hand pump system, which is the same idea with the filter holder, but you actually fill up the cup to 100 milliliters and filter that through by pumping it. And then finally the total phosphorus, which is here in the glass vial. And then it also has the preservative of how you're supposed to store it. So there's nothing for the phosphorus. It can stay room temperature, but it can also go in the refrigerator. You don't want to freeze it. The chlorophyll you do want to freeze in the filter paper. That's going to go in foil and into a container that will go into the freezer. And then the caffeine will need to be refrigerated in the refrigerator or cooler with ice. And so the second thing I do is put my labels on. Those already. So it's really important to match, make sure the labels, which should be with the field sheet, but that the numbers match. So specifically the Vail ID number, the order number, which is this, starts with the year 25 and then 01958. And in this case, it's the -002, but usually it's -001 for most people just doing surface samples. But just making sure these numbers match so that you have the exact tests with the exact field sheet that's going to go to the lab and the correct labels. So the phosphorus first here. I'm going to put these on vertically so that the lab can scan the barcodes easily. I'm not covering up this line here on the phosphorus. And same for the caffeine, which is this label. Put that on vertically, easy to read, no wrinkles. And then we're going to keep the chlorophyll sticker on. You can kind of fold back the excess because we're going to paperclip this to the foil that's containing the filter paper that's going to need to be frozen and tested. So I'll just put that over here for now. First thing I do is fill up the test tubes. So take my water sample. Most of you have a sample bottle this size. And just want to make sure it's well mixed, especially for the chlorophyll and the algae that can settle, without shaking it too vigorously. You don't want to break up the cells too much. And then you can fill up either one first. But with the phosphorus test tube, you want to fill up to this line, get it as close as you possibly can, with even the meniscus lining up with this line here for the lab. And so sometimes I just rinse off a little bit, just to rinse off the bottle there, and then pour my sample in. And it's okay to go over, and making sure that you don't get your fingers anywhere inside the sample or the cap. And then you can kind of do a flick method to get the excess off. When it gets close, I can just do 1 drop at a time until it bubbles out. Pretty much right there. Looks good. and that's an exact amount for the lab to test. For the caffeine, it doesn't have to be as exact because it'll do a subsample out of this test tube, but you want to get it to the top line, which in this case is 50 milliliters. So at least there, can go a little over, and that's fine. Make sure your sample's well mixed. Fill it up, a little gap top, but that should be fine for the lab. And again, making sure you don't get your fingers anywhere near the sample because you can easily contaminate both caffeine or phosphorus with your hands, depending on what you've been doing in the morning. So the next thing then is the chlorophyll filter. So this is nice and dried and clean, ready to go. So I'm gonna grab one of these small filters here. And you just wanna make sure you only grab one using tweezers, and you can kind of see that it's really thin. There's one there. Sometimes two will stick together. So you want to get that on here. Thankfully, it's not a windy day right now. So just line it up so all the holes are covered on the filter holder. And then I'm going to screw this on. I can remove this for now. And you want to screw it nice and tight and make sure there's at least one of those rubber gasket seals, which you can see here, the orange. And just kind of twist it until that's nice and tight. Doesn't have to keep going until you cut the filter, but just so that it's sealed. And then with your syringe, which should be kind of cleaned and mostly dried out, I'm gonna take the sample, make sure it's well mixed again. And then I'm gonna fill up this filter twice to the 50 milliliter line. So putting this plunger, the bottom of the plunger kind of on this line here twice. So just sticking in the end. Line it up. So you can see plunger line lining up pretty well with the 50 milliliters. I'm gonna stick that in this hole here and just hold it, and we're gonna squeeze firmly but kind of slowly, so you don't want to blow a hole through the filter, especially if there's a lot of algae in the sample. But if it's clear water, should go through pretty easily. Do that once. Give another swirl in the sample bottle. Fill it up again. 50 milliliters, you can always squirt a little bit out if you have to. If there's air bubbles too, you can kind of hold it right side up and squirt the air out. So now I'm going to filter this again. And what I like to do at the end is pull a little air into the syringe, squeeze out the excess water. You want to get it as dry as possible. Again, slowly. That should be good. Now when you unscrew this, there's our sample. You can see a little bit of coloration there from just a little bit of algae, but it was pretty clear today. Take your tweezers, and now you're gonna try to fold it twice. And it's okay if a little bit rips like it just did right here, as long as you keep it all within the filter sample. Fold it once, and then fold it twice into a quarter circle. And then come over here, and I actually don't need this much foil, so I'm gonna break off a little piece. That should be plenty. Put it right in the center there and just fold all the edges so that's secure. And finally take your label, put it on there, and the method I like to use so that your paperclip doesn't cover up any of the barcodes. And you don't want to be folding it either, is to kind of just put it on the end here, sort of right in between the barcodes like that, and that's it. And then this is going to go into like a container like this, a dark container typically, or a Ziploc bag. It's in a dark freezer. Put that in there, and then for now I'm going to put it into my cooler of ice. It'll then go into the freezer. And then make sure you always keep your lab field sheet with your samples to submit to the lab. And that's it.
And then some of you have this other chlorophyll filtration apparatus that looks like this. Essentially works the same way as what Mark just showed, except it has this hand pump to help suction the water through. So I'm going to take it apart here for a second. It has 4 pieces. The bottom piece is this filtration flask. It has the 2 spouts, so that goes on the bottom. Then we have the filter paper holder, same as before, just fits nice and snugly here on top. And then we have the top cup here, which holds 250 milliliters, but we're only going to fill it with 100 milliliters. And then we have the pump that's connected to a tube here. So first we're going to do the same thing as before. Just grab a piece of filter paper with your tweezers, put it right here on the filter holder, make sure all the holes are covered, same as before. Then we're going to take this top cup here and just screw it onto the filter holder. Make sure all your pieces are cleaned out with tap water and dried before you're doing this. And then the tube here, this end connects to this side of the filtration flask. Make sure that's snug and as airtight as possible. And then some of you have the 100 milliliter graduated cylinder, which you may first take your sample. And so for those of you that have the cylinder, you're going to pour your mix sample in up to the 100 milliliter line. Make sure it's on a level surface and you're eye level with it so you can see that the meniscus is at 100 milliliters. And then you're just gonna pour it in here, or if you don't have the cylinder, you would just use the measuring on the side of this cup, and you could just pour it to the 100 milliliter line. So we're just gonna pour this in all at once, and then take the pump, and you can cover this hole, the other hole of the spout, with your finger, thumb, whatever, and then start pumping. And you can see the water's moving steadily through into the bottom cup. Do a couple extra pumps to make sure the filter's dry as can be and all the water went through. Then you can remove the tube, remove this top cup here, and then same as before, take your tweezers and then use it to quarter the filter paper here. Quarter it up, put it in tin foil, and make sure it's ready to bring to the lab.